A world full of superpowers. Some cities capture and study superpowers. Some cities rank superpowers for their own use. So how would Linja and Feng Yiyu choose? Chapter 1. December 24th. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In this beautiful and livable city of Bihai, where over 500,000 people believe it is beautiful, some are full of opinions, some are thugs extorting money in the dark, and some are people collecting money from it. Everyone wants these people to leave here, but in the end, they can't even move a single stone from this city. Linja had also thought about it this way, but later he was more amused by this idea and couldn't change it himself. Spending so much time on this matter was like a clown. Linja doesn't have much affection for Bihai city. What he wants to do now is to work hard to leave the city, go to a place surrounded by the sea on all sides, find a girlfriend, and spend the latter half of his life without any worries. Linja withdrew his thoughts to the present, looked back at himself, and decided to solve the problem of not bringing money to the market to buy groceries first. Linja looked around and wanted to borrow some money from the people around him, and then return it later. Unfortunately, the people around him didn't want to burn this fire on him. After all, they didn't know each other. Why borrow money? Linja sighed helplessly, picked up the plastic bag containing the vegetables, stood next to the cashier, and smiled and said to the cashier, "Brother, please collect their money first. I'll call my parents and ask them to deliver the money." The cashier's disdain shifted from Linja to the next customer, a girl wearing a school uniform. She saw that the uniform was in the same school as Linja, but Linja rarely interacted with people at school, so she only knew that this person was from the same school. Linja did not make a phone call, but instead stared earnestly at the money collected in the cashier's pocket. Linja's eyes suddenly turned red at a speed that was imperceptible to the naked eye, then returned to brown, and the money in his belly floated into Linja's hands without anyone seeing it. Linja threw the money in his hand in front of the cashier, putting on a very anxious look. "Boss, hurry up and change the money. I've calculated it, give me 82 yuan, hurry up." The cashier looked disdainful and put the red 100 yuan into his pocket, then rummaged through it to find the money. The female classmate who was about to pay on the side said intentionally or unintentionally, "I don't know if that money is his, maybe it's yours." Linja and the cashier looked at the female classmate together, and Linja spoke up first, "This classmate, I don't know you at all. Are you just wronging me like this? Do you think you are very righteous?" The female classmate smiled and said, "It's nothing. Every time I make a payment, I say that. After all, there are bad people around, so try to do good." At this point, the cashier had already checked and found that he was indeed missing 100 yuan. This made the cashier believe what the female classmate had said. The cashier's expression of disgust turned into a fierce expression, and he grabbed Linja's hand and said, "I don't want to make things worse. 13 is not worth it. You'd better pay me as soon as possible." Linja sighed and took out 20 yuan from his pocket to pay the cashier, who then released Linja's hand. Linja quickly ran out of this vegetable market. On the way home, Linja looked at the 7 yuan found by the cashier in his hand and couldn't help feeling a bit sad. Although he could make 87 yuan, he only made 7 yuan now. But on second thought, I took out 20 yuan from that female classmate and caused her to lose 13 yuan, which is not bad. Thinking of this, the corner of Linja's mouth couldn't help but rise. "What are you laughing at?" A voice came from next to Linja. Linja turned his head and saw that this person was actually the girl from earlier. Linja adjusted his face and said with a hint of sadness, "I have a disease. Whenever I'm sad, I laugh. Of course, if I lose 13 yuan, I will be sad." "Cut, are you still sad about stealing money?" The girl sneered, "Can you give me back my 20 yuan now?" Linja stopped and stared at the girl in front with her back to him. Although she had previously mentioned that she would remind her boss every time she made a payment, it seemed like it was against her. This was the first time she had discovered that she had stolen money, so now it's the second time she has discovered it. "Hello," Linja asked towards the other person's back, "who the hell are you? You've been paying attention to me for a long time, haven't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have noticed that I stole the money." The girl turned her head and stared at Linja, saying, "Like you, one of the few superpowers in Bihai City. My name is Du Weiner, and I am usually a sophomore student at Bihai No. 2 Middle School. I am your senior sister." Linja has guessed the identity of the opponent's superpowers, and there is a research institute in Bihai City that specializes in studying these superpowers. However, it is said that the superpowers there are all crazy, so Linja usually hides his identity and doesn't let anyone know about his superpower identity. Although Linja believes in the other person's identity, he still needs to confirm, "What about your superpowers? I can't just believe your identity based on your words." Du Weiner pointed to Linja's feet, and Linja lowered her head to find that her shoes had been soaked in water. In the next second, the shoes froze instantly, and her feet also felt cold. "Hey!" Linja struggled to get out of the ice, and the ice had already frozen his feet tightly, struggling in vain. "I have 2 abilities, one is to create a certain amount of water in a certain area, and the other is to control the temperature in any small area." In the blink of an eye, all the ice under Linja's feet turned into water, and his pants and shoes were already wet. Linja took a breath and looked at the other person. "So why are you looking for me? Are you trying to protect me? I don't think it's necessary. I'm quite safe now and won't be caught in the research institute." "No," Du Weiner lowered her head, as if something sad had flooded her mind. "I want you to come with us to attack the research institute and rescue the superpowers who still have salvation, so that we won't come looking for you then." "Hey," Linja interrupted her, "what's so funny about you? I don't know them, why should I go save them? And I haven't known you for 5 minutes, have we? You came to beg me. Even if we go together, it's okay to be alive. If we were caught by them and treated like mice, we would have been wanted by the entire Bihai City. Then you told me you wouldn't come looking for me anymore, so I just didn't care after we finished using it, right? Have you finished speaking?" Du Weiner walked towards Linja as she spoke. "After speaking, you can go find someone else, I don't." Before finishing her sentence, Du Weiner walked up to Linja and said in his ear, "You will definitely agree tomorrow." Chapter 2. December 24th and December 25th. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the restroom of a vocational high school, 4 or 5 people gathered in this smoky place, each holding a cigarette in their mouth. This is the life of vocational high school. Everyone thinks they won't be affected, but in this environment, the only people who won't be affected are dead, right? Feng Yiyu was admitted to this school with a score of 480 in the middle school entrance examination. He doesn't think he won't be affected, he just wants to get a graduation certificate, and whatever he does in the future will be convenient. As for university, he never even thought about it. At this moment, Feng Yiyu is in a classroom in the teaching building. In order to make things comfortable, he asked the teacher to arrange himself at the end on the first day. He sleeps in the last row of each class, and the teacher is no exception. Their task is only to give lectures, and whether they can learn or not is not their own matter. Feng Yiyu was originally sleeping, but he felt someone looking at him. He looked up and realized that someone was staring at him at the door. He didn't care about the teacher on the podium and walked straight towards the door, in front of the person who was staring at him. "Don't you need to tell your teacher?" The man who had been staring at Feng Yiyu glanced at the man on the podium, but there was no change in the teacher on the podium. This situation has become commonplace, and there are people leaving the classroom every day without saying a word. It is useless to intervene in this situation. There's something to say, I don't want anyone to disturb my dreams. Feng Yiyu poked the other person's chest, as if trying to push them down from the second floor. The other party didn't mind either. They shook off their hands and walked towards the other side of the corridor. Feng Yiyu hesitated for a moment and followed suit. At the end of the corridor, both of them stopped and each gave Feng Yiyu a cigarette. Feng Yiyu took it and threw it downstairs. The other party didn't say much when they saw the situation. They turned their heads and pointed to a building. Can you destroy it? While Feng Yiyu was curious, he didn't ask much. The fact that he had superpowers was probably not a difficult matter to investigate, and many people came to him to use his superpowers to destroy buildings and buildings. Feng Yiyu raised her arm and turned her palm towards the building. A wave of energy gathered from her right shoulder and flowed into her hand. After a burst of blue light, the energy in her hand was shot out, turning into a highly destructive shell. This energy is flying towards the building, and according to Feng Yiyu's experience, this distance from the building will be exploded in 7 seconds. The impact of this energy will be considered as an unknown explosion and will end, so it will not burn on oneself. 7, 6, 5. At the 4th second, this energy disappeared as if nothing had happened. Is it more appropriate to say that Feng Yiyu's gaze is towards the place where the energy has disappeared, which is the first situation he has encountered since possessing this ability? Feng Yiyu didn't know what the situation was, but the man standing next understood. He pointed to the lower part of the building and said, "The building absorbed your abilities and then launched them down, using the temperature of the Earth's core to dissipate the energy. If you feel very hot now, it indicates that you have started to dissipate." Feng Yiyu did indeed feel the heat, which was quite abrupt in this winter. However, if the temperature in the Earth's core was only this low, then eliminating energy was just a speculation. Your ability is very special. It can cause feelings to the body, but the ratio of the two is very low. Even if the energy is eliminated, you will not die. We call this type of superpower an influencer. After telling me so much, I don't understand, Feng Yiyu interrupted the conversation in dissatisfaction. Just destroy that building, right? It's easy to make something complicated, and that's why I don't like learning. Feng Yiyu turned around and walked downstairs, with the man beside him quickly following suit. Hey, don't go alone. It's too dangerous to be alone. There are many devices inside that can restrain your superpowers. Are you bothering me? Feng Yiyu stopped and turned to grab the other person's neck. Look, it's 5 p.m. now. You go prepare and come find me at 12 p.m., and I'll wait for you at the school gate. Speaking of this, Feng Yiyu let go of the other person's neck and they quickly ran out of the school. Ah, it's really troublesome. Feng Yiyu waited for a while before also leaving the school and walking towards the building. Although Feng Yiyu is going to destroy the building, he will not blindly enter recklessly and inquire about the information of that building as he walks. That building was repaired a long time ago. To the public, it is said to be a beverage production plant, but in reality, many people know that this is a research institute for studying superpowers. Those who are caught will be taken to study, and may be dissected, electrocuted, cloned. Oh, that's so bad. Feng Yiyu walked to the entrance of the building. There were 2 armed guards in front of the gate, and when they saw Feng Yiyu, they both increased their vigilance. If Feng Yiyu had any suspicious activity, they would shoot directly. Feng Yiyu walked towards the other side of the building, and a guard quietly followed him. The guard saw Feng Yiyu walking to the other side of the building. The guard leaned against the wall and quietly leaned over, only to find that Feng Yiyu was missing. The guard felt strange. He was just a high school student across from him, and he disappeared in 4 or 5 seconds. However, his disappearance meant that he was not someone who wanted to do something bad. Thinking of this, the guard turned around and returned to the door. Where has Feng Yiyu gone? If the guard looks up while probing, they will find Feng Yiyu standing on a vertical wall. Feng Yiyu turned around and walked towards the roof of the research institute. Feng Yiyu's ability allowed her body to stick to the wall, concentrating this energy on her feet and allowing her to walk on the wall. Feng Yiyu did not directly go up to the roof, but instead squatted down to observe the roof. There are no guards on the rooftop, there are only one or two devices that look huge, which may be devices that absorb their own energy. With this thought in mind, Feng Yiyu stepped onto the roof, lifted her arm, and energy gathered at her wrist. So we can destroy this research institute, right? Then I can rest. Energy is emitted from one's wrist and explodes on the device. Feng Yiyu converges a wave of energy on the soles of her feet in advance, preventing it from exploding. This shockwave also does not affect her skin. The smoke dissipated, and Feng Yiyu lay on the ground with a painful expression on her face. Is it you who attacked our research institute? A researcher wearing a white coat walked up to Feng Yiyu and said, "This device is an ability jammer. Once you destroy it, you will be like this." The researcher pulled Feng Yiyu up and said, "We, the researchers, really like the experimental materials we brought to our door." Chapter 3. December 25th. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Lin Jie left the plastic bag at the door and walked towards his room. You should have given an answer, right? Do you think you can just drag like this? On the sofa, Lin Jie's father, Lin Weiheng, closed his eyes and was smoking a cigarette. Under his feet lay a woman with many burns on her body. This woman was Li Yuding, the mother of Lin Jie. Lin Jie grew up in this environment since childhood. His mother was often subjected to domestic violence by his father. Lin Jie repeatedly wanted to use his abilities to help his mother, but his mother cried and begged Lin Jie not to hold grudges against his father. Over time, Lin Jie treated everything in front of him as if nothing had happened, appearing as if nothing had happened to the outside world. However, his heart was already in turmoil. Lin Weiheng asked a question about his plan to leave with Li Yuding, asking if Lin Jie needed to leave him some money. He had never asked Lin Jie this question directly, but he cursed while assaulting Li Yuding. He was sure that Lin Jie heard. Lin Jie didn't even twitch his head as he opened the door and said, "Hurry up and get out. You don't have to leave me money, I'll make money by myself depending on the situation." Lin Weiheng kicked Li Yuding and said, "When are you waiting? Get up and go." Lin Jie didn't want to listen any longer, so he quickly entered his room, locked the door, lay in bed, wearing headphones, and listened to the music he had listened to countless times. Finally, when he heard a loud knocking sound, he took off his headphones, opened the door, and walked out. Lin Jie doesn't know when they will come back, he hopes they will never come back. But he knew that as long as Lin Weiheng surnamed Lin for a day, he would definitely come back, so he must cherish these few days. Lin Jie, who had never cooked before, knew all he knew about the dishes he bought was peeling them and throwing them into the pot. As a result, the trash can was filled with cabbage peels, tomato peels, potato peels, and ginger peels. In short, the chaotic stew in this pot was neither bad nor bad, but the ginger was too spicy. Lin Jie threw all the leftover food into the refrigerator, took out a bottle of yellow packaged beverage, and placed it on the coffee table. Upon second thought, the beverage was brought back to the room. Lying in bed, wearing headphones, drinking drinks, and scrolling through a very popular post. NPC theory, Lin Jie muttered this sentence in his mouth. The saying that everyone is an NPC once circulated online, and Lin Jie also believed in it for a period of time. Later, he also felt that this kind of speech was too absurd, so he didn't treat himself as the protagonist, nor as an NPC, and spent a long time like this. The song inside the earphones was suddenly interrupted, and instead a piercing incoming call notification sound came from the ear. Lin Jie flipped his phone out irritably, but when he saw the call, he had to calmly answer it and said, "Have you changed your mind?" "No, I mean if you really don't have money, you can go find your aunts and they will definitely take you in." Is there anything else?" "No, hey, we definitely won't go back in the short term, so you can treat that house as a gift. We can accept any renovation you want." "I really know how to pretend," Lin Jie whispered, "then I'll sell the house." After that, Lin Jie hung up the phone. At this moment, Lin Jie didn't want to think about anything that didn't involve the protagonist anymore. He just wanted to live a good life, as long as it didn't involve himself. While sleeping, Lin Zhe felt a strange long object beside him. As he hadn't woken up yet, he could only slightly move his arm to touch this long object. This long object has two protrusions at one point, and it is very wide. Just as he received these messages, Lin Zhe felt as if his head had been squeezed and he had fainted in a dream. The next afternoon at around 5 o'clock, it was not the alarm clock that woke Lin Zhe up, but water. Lin Zhe struggled to open his eyes and put his hand in front of him, trying to prevent water from entering his eyes. Lin Zhe sat up, wondering why the ceiling was leaking and why he was lying on the floor when he suddenly noticed Du Weiner standing in front of him sprinkling water. Lin Zhe quickly stood up and pointed at Du Weiner, asking, "Why are you here? Isn't this my home?" Then he thought again, it's not difficult to find out that I'm a superpower, and finding my address is not a problem. Don't underestimate my intelligence department. Du Weiner put on a very neutral posture. Unless you're here to confess to me today, I'll report you to the police for breaking into a famous mansion. Lin Zhe sat on the bed, ready to put on his earphones, saying that he wanted to report to Du Weiner was just to scare her off quickly. Hey, do you know what you'll face if you're caught by the research institute? Du Weiner turned her hands back to her back, as if she had turned into a pure young girl. Around 2019, it was rumored from somewhere in Beihai City that there was a research institute dedicated to studying the human body. It was said that people who arrived there either went crazy or died, which was particularly dangerous. However, no one knew the specific location of the research institute, and it was just an urban legend. However, for individuals like Lin Zhe with superpowers, their education from a young age is to have a research institute dedicated to studying superpowers, so one must be careful. Lin Zhe lay on the bed, answering Du Weiner's question with a nonchalant expression. Was he pulled to dissect or injected some terrible medicine into his head? Lin Zhe said as he made a deathly expression. Du Weiner smiled and threw a long strip of something in front of Lin Zhe. Lin Zhe picked up this thing, which had two protrusions in the middle. It was very wide, and Lin Zhe felt very familiar with it, knowing clearly that it was his first time seeing it. This is a superpower information harvester. Du Weiner pointed to the long object in Lin Zhe's hand. A normal person would have no use touching it, but a superpower would faint if they touched it, and then your information would start to be stored on it. If you haven't fainted, you must be somewhere where the information is stored. Lin Zhe casually threw the information harvester onto the ground, closed his eyes, obviously not taking Du Weiner's words to heart. His own information. Forgery of information by mediocre people like oneself is considered costly. If your information is obtained by people from the research institute, that's not good. Du Weiner lowered her head and grabbed the information harvester in her hand. She hadn't looked up yet, and she was confident that Lin Zhe must be looking at her with a shocked face now. The fact is indeed what Du Weiner thought. Lin Zhe looked at Du Weiner with a shocked expression on his face. At 6 o'clock, a flash of light flashed outside the window, which became the terrifying background for Du Weiner. Chapter 4. December 26th, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At 12:30 p.m. on December 26th. Why haven't those people come yet? On the rooftop of a building, Lin Zhe sat on the ground, holding a bottle of yellow packaged beverage in his hand, complaining to Du Weiner for killing time. You've been waiting for 30 minutes, can't you wait for another 2 minutes? Du Weiner looked at the message on her phone, and the person across from her said she had already arrived downstairs and was about to go upstairs. Well, I just want to finish the work quickly and live safely. Lin Zhe threw the bottle cap of the drink to the stairway, and the bottle cap rolled to one side. There was a sound of footsteps from the stairway. Originally, 3 people were supposed to come up, but 2 of them have already entered the factory. These 2 are ordinary people, and the one who came up is a superpower. According to their plan, 2 normal people will infiltrate the research institute and turn off the devices that restrict the use of superpowers inside. Du Weiner, Lin Zhe, and another superpower will attack the research institute reasonably and try to rescue everyone inside before the senior management notices. According to Du Weiner, the research institute claims to be a beverage manufacturer, but many people say that the factory is a human experiment factory. The senior management noticed that the spread of information was controlled, but this news is still circulating in a short range around the factory. Du Weiner saw the other party coming and quickly got up to welcome them, while Lin Zhe still sat on the ground, pouring drinks into his mouth, obviously not ready to communicate with them. Du Weiner walked up to Lin Zhe with the superpower and introduced to both sides, this person's name is Yaorui. His ability is to lift people up, with a range of 2 to 3 meters. He will rush forward and fight for the opportunity to grab people for us. This person's name is Lin Zhe, and his ability is his ability to control the movement of objects in his line of sight. After we rush in, he will assist us. First time meeting, many more in the future. I won't be able to meet you in the future. I will only help you this time and destroy this place. You won't be able to threaten me anymore, and I won't have any relationship with you anymore. This statement left Yaorui, who was originally full of enthusiasm, in a daze. Du Weiner quickly took Yaorui aside and started talking to him. Lin Zhe closed his eyes and remembered the scene from yesterday afternoon after 6 o'clock. Du Weiner obtained Lin Zhe's information acquisition device, which contained information that Lin Zhe was a superpower. Du Weiner's statement, if the people in the research institute know about it, clearly posed a threat to herself. Du Weiner lifted her head, stuffed the information harvester into her clothes, and looked at Lin Zhe, who looked shocked. What do you want to say? It looks quite shocking to see you, she said. Lin Zhe quickly adjusted his expression and said to Du Weiner with a very confident look, are you threatening me? What's not threatening? I don't understand, why don't you explain it to me, Lin Zhe? Du Weiner's tone became playful. At this moment, Lin Zhe was only thinking about 2 questions in his heart. First, is that long strip really an information collector? Will Du Weiner really sell herself to the research institute? There is a possibility of negating both of these questions, but Lin Zhe dare not gamble on this possibility. If a superpower is really discovered by the research institute, he will definitely be arrested. Studying superpowers is also allowed by the senior management, and it is useless to run to other places. Beihai City has the ability to chase him to the ends of the world. Hey, I heard that a superpower attacked the research institute this afternoon. At this moment, Lin Zhe was attracted by the conversation between Du Weiner and Yaorui. Really? I was still at Lin Zhe's house this afternoon. Please tell me what's going on. I'm not very clear either. It's just that I heard someone shot a shot at the research institute in my senior high school, but unfortunately it was absorbed by the institute. Many people have noticed this incident. In order to conceal it, the people above said that this incident was a meteor crossing. Are you saying it's funny? The meteor is only 6 or 7 meters away from the ground, And then? Who is that person? Lin Zhe couldn't help but ask. I don't know yet. Some of us went to vocational high school to investigate, but no one admitted to being a superpower. Yaorui turned his head and said to him. The 3 of them wanted to continue their conversation, but Du Weiner's phone was no longer allowed. The 2 ordinary people called, and Du Weiner quickly answered. Hey, have you guys taken care of it? It's closed, but there are superpowers inside that are very irritable. Several guards went up and didn't lock him up. This is not something you should manage. After you close it, we should go in. Yes. Hey, I'll go. How? Before finishing his sentence, a purple laser suddenly burst out from the top of the research institute. The laser lasted for about 7 seconds before disappearing again, and a huge irregular hole was burned out on the top of the research institute. Ah! I was wrong. Across the phone was the girl's screams, and it was unclear who was holding the phone now, so the 3 of them remained silent. After a long time, the phone quieted down and a trembling voice came from across the phone. Ah. Ah. Dead. Dead. You could hear the other person's fear from the phone. Calm down, let's talk about what happened first. Weiner tried to calm the other person's emotions and inquired about what was happening inside the research institute. It's a tall, black-clad, white-haired person with a bandage on his throat who killed everyone. Killed everyone. Killed everyone. The fearful voice across from us made us curious about this black-clad, white-haired person. Surprisingly, there's one more. A strange voice appeared on the opposite phone. Ah. Listen to me. I came in pretending to save you. I'm not a researcher. I also have to thank you for upgrading my energy so that I can now shoot lasers instead of just firing one shell. Let me go. I'm not a researcher. Let me go. I'm not a researcher. Let me go. I'm not a researcher. If I let you go, won't I hold a grudge against you for nothing? I don't like doing nothing, go to hell. Dee dee. The sound of dripping water came from the other end of the phone, cut. This is the last sentence, and after that, the phone was hung up. They. Yaorui covered his mouth, obviously unable to believe what was happening before him. Weiner also fell silent. For both of them, those two ordinary people must have been friends for many years, and it would definitely be uncomfortable to die now. For Lin Zhe, he had never met those two people even once, and there was no emotional connection, so he was not infected by emotions. Lin Zhe leaned against the wall on the rooftop and looked at the gate of the research institute. A man in black ran out. It's a hassle. Lin Zhe thought so and walked towards the stairs. Chapter 5. December 25th, December 26th, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a laboratory within the research institute, a man with a naked upper body, covered in blood, was tied to a table. In front of him was a researcher wearing white clothes, holding a test tube in his hand. He opened the man's mouth and inserted the test tube into his mouth. He used a needle to break the test tube, and the glass and water entered the man's throat together. This is a research institute in Bihai City, dedicated to studying superpowers. The first thing I do when I come to this research institute is to dye my hair white, which can distinguish between researchers and superpowers. The second thing is to feed the specially designed, ability-enhancing reagent, here along with the glass into the superpower's mouth. This reagent is a semi-finished product, which means that those who drink it with superpowers may enhance their strength, go crazy, or even die. Feng Yiyu was fortunate to not have personally experienced the above experience. When she woke up, her black hair had already turned white, her throat was bandaged, her school uniform was nowhere to be seen, and she had already changed into a black outfit. Observing the surroundings, I found myself surrounded by glass, indicating that I had been locked down. Oh, you're awake. A researcher placed his hand against the glass and looked at Feng Yiyu with an appreciative gaze. To be honest, when they asked me to take care of you, I was startled. Your ability is very terrifying. If you perform well, the entire surface of the earth may be shaken. Feng Yiyu also pressed her hand against the glass and began to gather energy. Her shoulder began to glow, but the light was purple and the glowing spot was behind her shoulder. Feng Yiyu was feeling puzzled when suddenly there was a pain in her shoulder. In an instant, the pain spread from her shoulder to her whole body. It's not an exaggeration to say that at this moment, there was no place where Feng Yiyu didn't feel pain, and the purple glowing spot behind her also disappeared. It seems that your abilities have improved. Let me give you a title. Can you emit lasers? How about the rainbow star? If you're not satisfied, you can switch to another one. The researcher outside the glass paid no attention to the situation of Feng Yiyu inside the glass. Instead, he was so happy with his research results that he placed his hands on the glass. What's inside this glass? Feng Yiyu asked weakly, ready for no response. Do you want to know? Forget it, answering your questions is what we researchers should do. The researcher put a sickly expression on the glass and said, this is a glass cover that specifically restricts the movement inside. Once you use your abilities inside, you will feel pain all over like you, and you won't be able to stand up. However, this effect can last for a short time, only 2 hours, right? Feng Yiyu twisted her neck in pain and saw the watch on the researcher's hand at 22.37. You wait, you can come out for breakfast tomorrow morning. I'll eat the rest, you'll definitely like it, haha. The researcher left with a smile. Feng Yiyu collapsed on the ground, the pain on her body making it impossible for her to think of anything, and she could only count the time in her heart, although the numbers she might have counted in her head were all wrong. 1, 2, 3, hey, look at this person, is he a newcomer? Don't worry about these things, all we need to do is turn off the device, and they will take these people out when the time comes. 100, 102103, have you never seen me? Do you know who she is? My dad, you can't afford to provoke us. You better not provoke us. 10001001, 1003, hey, have you heard about it? Today, our daughter and son. Law from above came to work here. Is it really fake? 3333, 334, 3335, what are you doing? Quick, catch them. 587558765877, I'm telling you, you've made a big deal out of it. Even if your father is an alien, it's useless. 650065016502. Feng Yiyu didn't continue counting, and she didn't want to think about how long was left. She only knew that the pain on her body had slowly begun to fade away, and she didn't want to think about the rest. Feng Yiyu sat up from the ground, leaned against the wall, and watched what was happening outside. He saw a man and a woman being held up by 2 guards, and it was unclear what had happened. Forget it, since I can't escape at the moment, let's take a nap. Just disguising upper-class relatives is a capital offense. In addition, you have turned off the device that suppresses superpowers. You actually want to live. Feng Yiyu opened his eyes and heard what the researcher had just said. Feng Yiyu tried to gather energy, but as he was still in pain, he did not succeed. However, if the pain did not worsen, it meant that the damn device was indeed turned off. What are you looking at? At this moment, the researcher who was in front of the glass an hour and a half ago leaned over again, staring at Feng Yiyu with a sickly expression. It's nothing, I just saw the commotion over there eating melons. Feng Yiyu could only be fooled at this moment. Hongguang Star, did you actually hear the news that the device was turned off? The researcher outside the glass pressed his entire face against the glass. Surprisingly, could you please bear this pain before the device was turned back on? Hee. The researcher reached into his pocket and groped for a moment, making a beep sound. Ah. The familiar pain returned to Feng Yiyu, which was even more painful than before. The researcher glanced at the time and said, it's already 12:30 p.m. now, and it will recover around 12:40 p.m. You just need to persist for 10 minutes. You've been persisting for 2 hours now, so it shouldn't matter if you persist for another 10 minutes, right? Ha. Feng Yiyu suddenly laughed, which attracted the eyes of everyone around her. Hongguang Star, what does your smile mean? Did you awaken the attribute of feeling happy after experiencing some pain? Ha. Feng Yiyu dragged her painful body to the glass and said, I'm laughing. I have 10 minutes to break this glass and beat you up. Ha, I'm happy to think of this. Ha, I also want to see this tempered glass. With your weak body now, how can you break it? Ha. The researcher laughed outside the glass. Chapter 6. December 26th, 3. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Feng Yiyu lay on the ground, her right hand laboriously pressing against the glass, gathering a small amount of energy on her shoulder, which was immediately dissipated by the pain. Ah ah ah. Feng Yiyu let out a piercing scream. Yo yo yo, didn't you say you were going to come out? Why are you still inside? There are still 7 minutes left now, ha ha ha, come out, look at your foolishness. Outside the glass, the researcher laughed, which was more penetrating than Feng Yiyu's screams. Inside the glass cover, Feng Yiyu placed her right hand on the glass again to gather energy, but unfortunately, it was not successful this time, and the pain on her body continued to intensify. Outside the glass cover, the researcher laughed wildly and kicked the glass, as if he had kicked Feng Yiyu. Feng Yiyu continuously gathers energy, the energy disappears, and the pain screams. Just like this, it lasted for 5 minutes, and Feng Yiyu collapsed to the ground without any energy gathering. The researcher saw Feng Yiyu fall to the ground and made a dissatisfied, cut sound. He spat phlegm on the glass and turned to prepare to leave. You just left like this, how can I blow you up? The researcher turned around and saw Feng Yiyu still lying paralyzed on the ground. He believed it was a hallucination just now, but he still squatted in front of Feng Yiyu, stretched out a finger, and swung it out of the glass like teasing a little dog. There's still 1 minute and 30 seconds left. If you don't get up again, you won't have a chance. I won't call you Hongguang Star anymore. I'll call you dog in the future, a useless dog, haha. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Then there's still time. Before the researcher could react, Feng Yiyu stood up in front of her, with no expression of pain on her face. The researcher quickly reached into his pocket and said, beep, 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 beep. Is it strange? Feng Yiyu pressed her left hand against the glass and explained her situation. Your device has a drawback. Pain tends to gather in one place, and after using it a few times, it will gather in one place. Feng Yiyu no longer gave the researcher a chance to react. His left shoulder began to gather energy, which was transmitted from his shoulder to his left hand. Feng Yiyu made a goodbye gesture to the researcher outside the glass. Boom! With a loud explosion, the entire glass was shattered, and both Feng Yiyu and the researcher were pierced with many glass fragments. However, in terms of tragedy, it was the researcher who suffered. His entire face was bleeding from the explosion, and although he was still far from death, he could not move on his own for a long time. Feng Yiyu walked out of the glass cover, and the pain in her right shoulder disappeared instantly. Feng Yiyu had not felt discomfort for 2 hours, so much so that she forgot that she was currently in the research institute. Without the need for orders from others, 8 armed guards immediately surrounded Feng Yiyu and demanded that he crouch down with his head in his arms. Oh, by the way, I forgot that I'm quite dangerous now. Hey, that one over there, Feng Yiyu pointed to a guard. Come on, let's see who's faster. Is it my gun or your gun? How arrogant. The pointed guard aimed at Feng Yiyu's arm and pulled the trigger. At the moment when the opponent pulled the trigger, Feng Yiyu shot a small energy ball between his own fingers. When the small energy ball touches a bullet, it undergoes an invisible explosion, causing the entire bullet to be destroyed and the small energy ball to dissipate. A quick-witted guard quickly ordered, shoot together. You can't shoot. Behind Feng Yiyu, the researcher, whose face was covered in blood from the explosion, quickly stopped him from shooting. It's a precious research material, you can't kill it. Capture it alive. In the research institute, the status of the guards is far lower than that of the researchers, so the guards cannot refuse orders from the other party. The 8 guards are slowly surrounding Feng Yiyu, preparing to approach and catch him. At this moment, Feng Yiyu stood still, waiting for them to come and catch him. This action aroused suspicion among the people around him, and the guards stood still, staring strangely at Feng Yiyu. At this moment, some other superpowers inside the glass hood also began to stir up, and the entire research institute was in chaos. This was the first riot that had occurred in the history of research. Well, the distance is probably enough. Feng Yiyu looked at the guards around her and Nan said. Up. Someone in the guard shouted, and all the guards around rushed towards Feng Yiyu, waving their guns towards him. At this moment, Feng Yiyu focused her energy on the soles of her feet. As the guards around her were about to catch her, the energy under her feet turned into a laser beam and shot into the sky. The arms and legs of the guards around her were also cut off by the laser. If I were to pick it up now, I would definitely be able to pick it up. Don't come and deceive me, ha ha ha. Feng Yiyu counted for 7 seconds in her heart before dissolving the laser. Looking around, there were researchers in white clothes, but she didn't see any armed guards. It must be that they had all run away. Feng Yiyu thought to himself that he could already carry out a great slaughter. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Feng Yiyu killed everyone in white from the research room to the conference room, including the one who claimed to be the daughter of the upper class. At this point, Feng Yiyu had already crossed out the person in white from his life and death book. In the end, Feng Yiyu killed all the white clothes in the laboratory. Feng Yiyu was supposed to run away at this moment, but he heard someone shouting. This voice should not be a superpower. Feng Yiyu followed the sound and walked to the laboratory, where a researcher was indeed on the phone. Kill it all. Kill it all. The researcher shouted in fear into his phone, clearly frightened. Surprisingly, there's one more. Feng Yiyu approached and reminded the other party to pay attention to herself, in case they didn't even know they were here to take their lives. Ah! The researcher turned back in fear and knelt down on the ground. Listen to me. I came in pretending to save you. I'm not a researcher. Feng Yiyu saw that there was only one researcher left on the other side, and he was not in a hurry to kill them. He focused his energy on his shoulder and admired him, saying, "Thank you all for upgrading my energy. I could only fire one shell now, but now I can fire lasers." The other researcher didn't even listen, and at this moment, he just wanted the other person to save his life. Let me go. I'm not a researcher. Let me go. I'm not a researcher. Let me go. I'm not a researcher. Feng Yiyu couldn't listen to the other person's excuse. Let you go. Then I don't hold a grudge against you for nothing. I don't like doing nothing. Feng Yiyu pulled out a piece of glass from her lap. Go to hell. Feng Yiyu stabbed the glass into the opponent's arm and kicked him in the head. Due to fear, the opponent fainted directly. Feng Yiyu glanced at the other person's phone, with the words, "Do wanna" written on the note. Feng Yiyu sneered and stomped on the phone, quickly running out of the research institute. Chapter 7. December 26th, 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bihai City is divided into 4 districts. U District, Mining District, Urban and Suburban. According to economic rankings, it can be classified as Urban, Mining District, U District, and Suburban. The most people live in the urban area, followed by the suburbs and Yutsu, and then the mining area. Therefore, for ordinary people, U District has become the most suitable place to live. Lin Zhe's home lives in an inconspicuous community in Yutsu District, while Bihai No. 2 Middle School is located in the city center, and the entire journey is very far. Therefore, Lin Zhe had to take a bus to the city center at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. However, Lin Zhe was still asleep at 9:30. Lin Zhe arrived at home at 2 o'clock in the morning and fell asleep at 3:30, so he only slept for 6 hours. Dong dong dong, dong dong dong. Lin Zhe stuffed his entire head into the blanket, trying to block the damn sound from outside. Dong dong dong, dong dong dong. Lin Zhe opened his eyes irritably and finally recognized that the damn sound was a knock on the door. Lin Zhe got out of bed, casually took care of his hair, and opened the door in a daze. As soon as he opened the door, a fist hit Lin Zhe's face. Because Lin Zhe hadn't opened the door for too long, the punch was so strong that Lin Jie felt a nosebleed gushing out of his nose, but he still tried hard not to let the blood flow out. "Ah, sorry. The person outside realized their behavior and quickly apologized. At this moment, Lin Jie also woke up and recognized the person in front of him as Zhao Wanqing, a daughter of his neighbor. This girl with black hair and fair skin saw that Lin Jie didn't pay much attention and walked directly into the house. "Where's uncle and auntie? Have you gone to work yet?" Zhao Wanqing looked strange. At this time, Lin Jie's father should be beating his mother. It was also for this reason that Zhao Wanqing's parents often instructed her to take care of Lin Jie, this poor child. To be precise, the two of them are like childhood sweethearts, but Lin Jie just treats her as a younger family member. They left for a while, I'm sure they won't come back for a while. Lin Jie covered his nose, took a few sheets of toilet paper from the coffee table, wiped his nose blood, and threw the paper into the trash can filled with blood-stained toilet paper. "Oh," Zhao Wanqing nodded and looked at the time. "Hey, it's almost 10 o'clock now. Did you just wake up? Hey, I've been punched by you and now I'm clear-headed." Zhao Wanqing didn't continue talking to Lin Jie, but instead helped him pack his backpack. During the holiday, Lin Jie threw the books everywhere, and Lin Jie was obviously not someone who would return them to their original place. Therefore, the task of putting the books back in his backpack was entrusted to Zhao Wanqing. Lin Jie took off his coat, picked up his school uniform and put it on. He took out a bottle of yellow packaged beverage from the refrigerator, took a sip, twisted on the lid, and threw it onto the bed. "Stop playing." Zhao Wanqing, who had packed up, handed her backpack to Lin Jie. Lin Jie took the backpack, picked up the drink from the bed, and stuffed it into the backpack. The two of them walked out the door like this. Zhao Wanqing is a junior high school student who attended a school located in the city center. Therefore, Zhao Wanqing and Lin Jie can walk together for a while, and this is the case every Sunday morning. Lin Jie is already familiar and can no longer be familiar with it. Lin Jie and Zhao Wanqing stood under the bus stop sign, quietly waiting for the arrival of the bus. "Brother, did you know that a beverage production factory was hit by a terrorist attack last night?" Zhao Wanqing felt bored and started talking to Lin Jie. "What do I know about that?" Lin Jie leaned against the station sign, closed his eyes, which could make himself more comfortable. "The problem is not that, it was one person who did it. And this person also injured the entire factory. The light ones were just their arms pierced by glass, the heavy ones are not awake now." Zhao Wanqing tried to recount to Lin Jie the news she saw on her phone last night, but Lin Jie showed no interest at all. "Hey, isn't it enough if there's no death?" Lin Jie replied perfunctorily. "Also, I heard that the person who attacked was called Feng Yiyu. Yesterday, his photo even appeared in the news of Bihai City. He's really handsome, with thick black hair. I don't know if it's naturally curled or hot, and his eyes have different pupils, one black and one brown. How do I feel that you have a good impression of him?" Lin Jie opened his eyes and looked at Zhao Wanqing. "You can like others, but don't like such villains. What's so bad about the wind you said? Don't like him." At this moment, the bus also arrived, and Lin Jie and Zhao Wanqing got on the bus together. As it was the last bus in the morning, both of them sat down in the back row, making it convenient to get off without attracting attention. It takes about 2 hours from Yiyu to the city center. Originally, taking the subway was faster, but in order to save money, I took the bus. Lin Jie sat in his seat, wearing headphones, so he was not very clear about what was happening around him. However, when he realized it, Zhao Wanqing had already fainted. What happened during this period? After Lin Jie and Zhao Wanqing sat in their seats, Zhao Wanqing saw that Lin Jie was wearing headphones and did not chat with him. She sat in her seat, lost in thought. At this moment, in the back row of the two, a man dressed in white took out a long item with his left hand, extended his right hand to the armrest of the seat, and after a second, his right hand reached into the armrest. But in reality, the right hand was not in the supporting hand, it appeared on the head of Lin Zhe and Zhao Wanqing. The man saw his right hand appearing on both sides of their heads, so he withdrew his right hand and threw the long object into his armrest. As expected, the object fell from the heads of Lin Zhe and Zhao Wanqing to Zhao Wanqing's feet. Zhao Wanqing was in a daze when a long object suddenly fell in front of her. Feeling strange, someone behind her suddenly patted Zhao Wanqing's shoulder and said, "Girl, help me pick up that thing. I accidentally dropped it." Zhao Wanqing obediently picked up the item and handed it to the man behind him. After the man took the item, he disappeared in front of Zhao Wanqing. Zhao Wanqing was frightened and was about to go to the other person's seat to check when a wave of drowsiness struck and she fainted in her seat. Lin Zhe heard a commotion nearby and turned his hair to see that Zhao Wanqing was already asleep. He looked at the time and found that there was still over an hour left until the station arrived. Therefore, Lin Zhe closed his eyes, but he did not sleep. His mind was filled with the man in the black clothes who had killed everyone in the research institute early this morning. If we can make friends with him, Lin Zhe's abilities and his abilities will definitely go to work in the demolition team. He can use laser to dismantle it, Lin Zhe can use mental power to dismantle it, and he can definitely make a lot of money. Lin Zhe thought of this and laughed loudly, thinking about making money and how to spend this money in the future. Chapter 8. December 26, 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Feng Yiyu lay on the ground, enduring the pain from her throat wound. Looking at the sun about to rise in the sky, Feng Yiyu lifted her tired and painful body and walked towards the direction of vocational high school waiting for me. Feng Yiyu walked on the street with a sissy voice, and the people around him looked at him with strange eyes. Feng Yiyu didn't care about the eyes of the people around him. Now he just wanted to go back to vocational high school, climb up to the table, and sleep in a class. Walking up to a TV shop, the news from last night in Bihai City was currently playing on the TV. Due to the need to display the TV, the sound was particularly loud, and Feng Yiyu intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the TV outside the glass. At 6 p.m. today, a man attacked a beverage manufacturing factory in our city, and all workers in the factory were killed. The man has not been arrested yet, and citizens need to be more careful. After speaking, a photo appeared next to the host, showing Feng Yiyu. However, in the photo, Feng Yiyu was wearing a school uniform and had black hair. Obviously, no one would recognize the current Feng Yiyu. Feng Yiyu was lying on the glass, staring at her own photo on TV. Is she wanted? But this time doesn't match the photo at all. I should be studying in the research institute after 6 o'clock, and the attack is simply baseless. After thinking for a long time, Feng Yiyu finally came to the conclusion that the upper echelons did not want to escalate the situation. If the affairs of the researchers were exposed, the government could intervene in the investigation. Cut. Feng Yiyu disdainfully spat on the ground and continued walking towards the vocational high school. You're very uncivilized, a heavy voice echoed into Feng Yiyu's ear. Feng Yiyu turned back and cursed, "What do I want to do? It's not your turn yet." Before he could finish speaking, Feng Yiyu realized that there was no one behind him. Feng Yiyu was feeling strange when he suddenly got punched in the head. It felt like a punch from an iron hammer. Although he didn't fall down yet, nothing was amiss. Behind Feng Yiyu, a tall man dressed in white stopped his fist in the air. Seeing that Feng Yiyu had not fallen, he grabbed his collar and walked towards the nearest alley. "Who are you? What are you doing?" Feng Yiyu struggled to break free from the other person's hands, but in the blink of an eye, she was in the alley. Feng Yiyu didn't even feel that the other person had been walking for so long. Bang! The man punched Feng Yiyu heavily on the head, and this punch successfully made Feng Yiyu's head bleed. Bastard! Feng Yiyu covered the wound on her head, and her body instinctively began to gather energy. This energy was stronger than before, and it would make the other person disappear directly, even her little finger would disappear. Feng Yiyu raised her arm and pointed it towards the other person's head. This powerful energy converged at Feng Yiyu's fingertips. After 1 second, this energy transformed into a slender beam of light. If this energy penetrated the other person's head, they would definitely die, right? Feng Yiyu thought so much that her legs were pierced by a beam of light and she was thinking about the other person's death. Ah! Feng Yiyu ignored the wound on his head and quickly covered the blood hole on his leg. The hole was very small, only 1 centimeter, but it was so small that Feng Yiyu let out a painful cry. I can't die. The man stared at Feng Yiyu as if he were looking at a dead dog. I've calculated it, there aren't any important nerves or bones in the area where you passed through, and you dissipated the energy midway, right? Let me introduce myself. My name is Mo. I am 24 years old, and I hold the position of empowered. I am the strongest superpower in this city, and I think you can speculate on my abilities. I won't go into further detail. Moying said this and smiled. I have a subordinate next to me who has the ability to see the future. He said he sees your future and will sit in a position where he can use it, but he doesn't know where he can use it. In order to keep my position, he plans to throw you out of Bihai City. We investigated you and found that you often use your abilities to help others demolish some buildings. We have known for a long time that someone has been using their abilities to destroy buildings. In order to conceal the existence of superpowers and maintain our zero ability appearance here, we helped you keep it a secret. We sent someone to the vocational high school to find you and ask you to demolish the research institute. Everything that happened later is within our calculations. We even fabricated news about Rainbow Star for your sake. Please get out of Bihai City now and never come back, otherwise we will have to arrest you and put you under house arrest in the neighboring Fatesai City. After a few words, Feng Yiyu understood a little, but there were also some that he didn't understand. He only knew that if he wanted to have a free body now, he would have to leave Bihai City and go to other cities. It's not a problem to go to other cities, and I don't have much family or friends to miss here. However, I don't even have money on me, so it's definitely not easy to go there. I'll give you 20 yuan to take the subway, the faster the better. Don't cause trouble here. Mo Ying threw down the 20 yuan and turned into the darkness. Feng Yiyu picked up the 20 yuan, is this a charity for himself? Feng Yiyu's mind was filled with these words, but even now, what could she do with her current situation? Catch up and beat him up. Feng Yiyu grabbed the wall and struggled to stand up, standing at the corner of the alley, looking outside, ready to take a taxi to the hospital for treatment, and then leave the city. With this thought in mind, Feng Yiyu limped onto the sidewalk, looking at the cars coming and going on the road, and spotted a taxi. Before the car even reached her, she pretended to fall to the ground. Before the taxi driver met, there was a person covered in blood lying on the ground. They quickly prepared to change lanes, but the person stood up and stood in front of the taxi. At this moment, there was no time to change lanes, so they had to stop. Seeing the car stop, Feng Yiyu opened the car door and found a man and a woman inside. Both of them were wearing school uniforms, with the man holding the woman and the woman closing her eyes, as if she had fainted. Cut. Feng Yiyu didn't care about these two people and just sat in the taxi. The hospital. The taxi driver dared not provoke the man covered in blood and drove straight towards the hospital. Feng Yiyu leaned back in her seat, ready to take a break, but the man next to her kept staring at her. Feeling uncomfortable, Feng Yiyu wanted to scare her off and said, "What's wrong? I don't agree. Otherwise, I'll throw it down for you." The man across from him was not afraid. Instead, he approached Feng Yiyu and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "You have white hair, black clothes, and a bandage tied around your neck. Are you the person who killed the entire research institute researcher last night?" Chapter 9. December 26, 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Please go to the hospital first, she has fainted. Lin Zhe patted the door of the driver's cab and begged the driver to drive to the nearest hospital. The driver didn't even glance at Lin Zhe and Zhao Wanqing, but said disdainfully and confidently, I can't make the decision about this. You need to ask the passengers for their opinions. If they are willing, I can go to the hospital now. Lin Zhe looked at all the passengers with anticipation, and each passenger deliberately avoided Lin Zhe's gaze, as if Lin Zhe's gaze was a knife, and seeing it would kill them, whether it was an elderly person over 60, a middle-aged person over 40, or even a student in the same school. That's why Lin Zhe doesn't like this city. If he's in a hurry to work, it's okay. However, according to the regulations in Bihai City, each position only has day and night shifts and cannot start working in the afternoon. At this time, besides the elderly who go shopping, there are also students who go to school in the car. Lin Zhe gave up pleading with the driver, regardless of whether his abilities would be exposed or not. His eyes were fixed on the safety hammer on the car glass, which floated over everyone's heads. Lin Zhe extended his right hand to his head, and when he extended it again, he already had an additional safety hammer in his hand. Lin Zhe placed Zhao Wanqing in an empty space, walked to the front door, and raised the safety hammer to aim at the upper left corner of the door. Hey, what are you doing? Stop and I'll drive for you. The driver stared ahead and asked Lin Zhe to stop, but it was already late. With a loud bang, the entire glass appeared in a row. Lin Zhe threw the safety hammer onto the car, picked up Zhao Wanqing, and kicked the entire glass open with his foot. At this moment, the bus driver quickly parked the bus on the side of the road. He had already felt that the male student in front of him was not easy to mess with, and getting him off the bus was the best choice. Lin Zhe looked at a man holding a phone, and Lin Zhe controlled his wallet to come out of the back door and into the hands of Lin Zhe at the front door. Lin Zhe threw his wallet on the ground and ran towards the nearest taxi to him. Good luck, I found an unoccupied rental car. Where are we going? The driver asked indifferently. The nearest hospital, Lin Zhe said as he carried Zhao Wanqing into the car. After Lin Zhe got into the car, the taxi driver slowly fastened his seatbelt, slowly released the handbrake, and slowly stepped on the clutch. The whole car was moving at a speed of 20 yards. Driver, did I just get my driver's license yesterday? Lin Zhe asked with a dark face, word by word. No, whether this car is fast or not depends on its mood. If you give it more, it will be happy and run faster, on the contrary, if you don't give it more, it will be unhappy and run slower. I'm glad you, Grandpa. Lin Zhe took a plastic bottle from somewhere and threw it directly onto the back of the driver's head. This force was within a range of not making the other person unable to drive but uncomfortable. Wow. You. The driver didn't care if the car was moving, so he turned his head and prepared to teach Lin Zhe a lesson. At the moment when the driver turned his head, he was suddenly hit hard on the back of his head again, causing the driver to fall completely towards the back seat. Lin Zhe pretended to kick the driver's chin and gently kicked his body back into the front row. Drive quickly, otherwise I'll give you all your car and I'll still give you the money, Lin Zhe said with a dark face, trying to maintain patience with the driver. The driver was not a very stubborn person, so he quickly sat back in the driver's seat and drove towards the hospital at a speed of 80 yards. Lin Zhe looked at Zhao Wanqing lying next to him. In order to prevent sudden braking, Lin Zhe hugged Zhao Wanqing on his lap, so that even if he brakes suddenly, he can protect Zhao Wanqing. Hey, brothers, there's a man with blood on his face on Jeju Road. On the passenger seat, the phones that drivers usually use to share fun rang. The driver didn't speak, but he listened clearly. Hey, let me ask you, which road are we taking now? Lin Zhe didn't want to continue this stalemate with the other party and asked first. Let's go to Jeju Road. Hey, I didn't intentionally drive up here. It was on Jeju Road when you took a taxi. Jeju Road, I hope you don't meet me. Before Lin Zhe could finish speaking, he saw a man far ahead with a face covered in blood and his black clothes about to turn into red clothes. A limping man walked towards the center of the road. "I met you." The driver smiled and continued driving forward. The man walked onto the taxi lane and lay down directly. "Yoha, you're ready to hit me. How did you think about this big distance?" The driver laughed even louder, slowed down, and prepared to change lanes. At that moment, the man stood up and limped towards the road that the driver was about to change. The driver had to stop the car. "I'll go, this is really deceiving me." The man stood in front of the taxi and didn't lie down anymore. Instead, he opened the car door in the back seat, glanced at Lin Zhe and Zhao Wanqing, and cut into the car. Hospitals. Simple 2 words, but these 2 words seemed to have magic, making the driver no longer mislead this man like Lin Zhe, and honestly drive towards the hospital. Lin Zhe has been staring at the man in front of him since just now, with white hair, black clothes, and a bandage around his neck. Although other superpowers in the research institute are also like this, what if? The man saw that Lin Zhe had been staring at him all along, thinking that Lin Zhe was not convinced, so he put on a haughty look and said, "What? I don't agree. Otherwise, I'll throw it down for you." Lin Zhe carefully recalled the voice on the phone early this morning, and upon closer comparison, it felt both similar and different. In order to confirm, Lin Zhe approached the other party and said in a voice that only both sides could hear, "You have white hair, black clothes, and a bandage tied around your neck. Are you the person who killed the entire research institute last night?" Upon hearing this, the other party burst into laughter. Lin Zhe was puzzled, but the other party ignored the driver and said to Lin Zhe, "I don't know who you are, but seeing that you are wearing a school uniform now, you must not be a high-level official. I want to tell you now, no matter where you learned about this matter, you better not meddle in your own business. I didn't kill them, I just hurt them. I'm not stupid enough to be wanted for so many people." Lin Zhe immediately confirmed the identity of the other person, who must be the one who caused chaos in the research institute early this morning. However, the other person had said so, and there was not much he wanted to say for a moment. In such a quiet situation, both sides went to the hospital. Unlike Lin Zhe who honestly paid, the bald man used some method that made the driver faint. Chapter 10. December 26, 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Luojing City is a very harmonious and beautiful city. It is far from Bihai City, and taking the subway takes 5 to 7 hours, so by the time Feng Yiyu arrived, it was already over 9 o'clock. Feng Yiyu's eyes are filled with this unfamiliar city, harmonious. Beautiful. He doesn't believe it. Do you remember what Bihai City said to the public? Beautiful and livable, but eventually I was kicked out. Wandering aimlessly on the street, with bandages tied around my face and neck, passers-by would give Feng Yiyu a second glance, and some even took out their phones. Oh, it's so harmonious. Feng Yiyu leaned against the glass of a certain store, ignoring how the owner insulted her. She closed her eyes and began to recall what had happened today. I slept for a whole morning, woke up in the afternoon and was beaten up. Then I stopped a taxi, and a student recognized it himself. He then went to the hospital for a doctor to bandage it, and finally escaped here. Why did you come here yourself? I didn't know, but I chose Luojing City among many locations. I just left like this. What if vocational high school dismisses me? I can't even get a vocational high school graduation myself, hey. A voice full of alertness pulled Feng Yiyu out of her thoughts. Feng Yiyu turned around and inside the store, a short old man stared at him with an alert expression on his face. This is a jewelry store, and there are naturally thugs inside. If Feng Yiyu is still leaning against the glass, a few thugs in the corner will definitely come out and beat him up. Cut. Feng Yiyu left this sentence, left the glass, and continued aimlessly towards the city center. The three feelings of hunger, pain, and fatigue were hidden in Feng Yiyu for a long time. Feng Yiyu wanted to run directly into a roadside snack shop and use his superpowers to grab food, but ultimately gave up on this decision. "Hello, may I ask?" "Get lost." Feng Yiyu doesn't want to get involved with anyone, even if the other person is good, he must firmly refuse. As a dog, he doesn't need their sympathy. "No, I am." "Get lost." Feng Yiyu is still refusing. He has decided that if the other party talks to him again, he will hit her with a bullet and wake her up tomorrow. At this moment, Feng Yiyu suddenly realized that her feet could no longer be lifted, as if they were stuck to the ground by water. Even with her maximum strength, she could not lift them up. "This is really what makes you. I asked you to get out of here." Feng Yiyu already knew the other party's identity as a superpower, but even so, Feng Yiyu still refused the other party, no matter what they wanted to do. "You're all like this, why don't you listen to me?" A wave of energy drifted onto Feng Yiyu's shoulder, attracting passers-by around. "Even if I don't turn around now, I can still attack you, even if I accidentally kill an innocent person." Of course, Feng Yiyu is talking big. He doesn't even know where the other party is, so how could he possibly attack? "Listen to me first, the Rainbow Star." Upon hearing the name, Feng Yiyu's body visibly trembled. Surprisingly, if the other party knows this name, it means that their identity is not an ordinary person, at least someone who is trusted by the senior management of Bihai City. "I'll untie it for you. How about we go to a place where nobody is around?" "Humph." Feng Yiyu turned around and found that she was talking to a brown-haired girl, probably in her 20s. She was about the same height as herself and wearing a white top, which looked no different from an ordinary person. Soon, both sides arrived at a dark corner, with Feng Yiyu sitting on the ground and the girl standing in front of him. "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Su Xianyao, a superpower with the ability to bond two objects together. We already know your identity, Feng Yiyu, who was wanted for attacking a research institute in Bihai City and then fled to our place." "What? Are you a police officer or something who wants to arrest me?" Feng Yiyu couldn't bear to listen anymore and directly asked the main person. "No, I am a member of the underground forces in this city." "Do you understand the underground forces?" Every city has some kind of underground power, which is a name given to oneself by thugs after they grow up, like something to be proud of. Our underground forces here all have a unified name, darkness, which means the dark side of the entire city. Although we are in darkness, the upper echelons still support our existence. If there are any difficult people or projects to win, they will let us take action. "So what? Are you trying to drag me into your team as a triad? I'm only 17 years old, is that how you want to drag me into your dark world? Although I'm also quite dark now, your darkness is even dirtier and disgusting than mine." Su Xianyao had anticipated the situation and didn't say much. She threw down a 100 yuan bill and said, "It's okay, you don't have any money on you now. Giving you 100 yuan is enough to survive, but you still like to find your own place to rest. If you change your mind, go to Longran Restaurant tomorrow, on the 102nd. We've been there all day. This restaurant is quite famous, just ask around and you'll know." After Su Xianyao finished speaking, she turned around and left. Feng Yiyu still sat on the ground, looking at the red money on the ground. After careful consideration, she picked up the money and threw it onto the roadside. However, the money disappeared in a short while. The dark side. What kind of organization made up of jerks want me to join? This is the funniest thing I've heard this year, I won't join even if I die. As Feng Yiyu thought, she walked along the road with an extra chicken skewer she had snatched from a child's hand. Let's rest. Feng Yiyu arrived at a hotel. Due to its remote location and rudimentary decoration, she only needed 30 yuan to stay overnight. Even so, Feng Yiyu also threatened the boss and threw all the thugs out to the ground, which gave him a room to sleep in. Feng Yiyu lay in bed, thinking about what to do tomorrow. At least she couldn't keep snatching food from the children. Not only could she not eat enough, but she might also be caught. Do you work? What is the use of one's own ability? Demolition. Even if it were demolition, would a 17-year-old vocational high school student have to demolish it? Everything is just a fantasy. Robbery. Perhaps it's convenient to rob with one's own abilities, it's quite funny. Feng Yiyu flipped over, thinking that he was indeed too weak. He should have found a support, but did he really want to join that thing called the dark side? Feng Yiyu completely abolished all the thoughts in his mind. Today has not passed yet, so there is no need to eat what is in his mouth and look at what is in the pot. Thinking so, Feng Yiyu fell asleep.